Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my Blade Runner film review slash Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep book review, touching on both the book and the movie, and how well I felt like the movie adapted the book. I'm only going to be talking about the 1982 movie in this video. I haven't seen the other movies, and I watched the 1982 movie last night, but if that's the type of stuff that you like to watch, I do have a full playlist of videos where I do these book adaptation reviews. I'll link the playlist somewhere on the screen and down below so you can watch those if you would like to. And if you are interested in that type of content, I do hope you will subscribe to my channel. And if you do like this video concept, please give this video a thumbs up. And without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. I do have some notes with me to go over because I feel like the last time I did this, I got a little rambly, and so I'm trying to make this a little bit more of a streamlined experience. I should have told you that I loved you one more time. There shouldn't be any spoilers in this, I don't think, but if there are going to be spoilers, I will clearly label them on the screen. This is an older book and an older film, so I'm not sure how spoilery things will be. Also, with the ambiguity aspect of the ending of this book and movie, I'm not sure how spoilery it actually is, because there's not really a spoiler, I guess. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a 1968 science fiction novel by Phillip K. He's an American author. I haven't read any of his other stuff, but I've heard that it's pretty good. It's classic sci-fi. And something that I thought was interesting about the book is that it is written tonally, and it's paced in a way that is very similar to like classic mystery and noir novels, more so than what you would expect from modern science fiction. There's a lot of what the character is thinking of and what the character is going through, and not so much focused on plot elements, whereas modern books, typically the largest time chunk and the largest section that you're reading is about the biggest plot element. This, it's much more about the time is more evenly spaced, which feels a little disjointed to what the modern reader is used to. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep follows Rick Deckard, who is a Special Forces police officer in charge of retiring androids who have escaped from the Earth's colonies in Mars back to Earth. At the beginning of the book, we meet Deckard, and he's having some marital issues with his wife, who is becoming obsessed with their empathy box. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but Deckard is pretty unhappy in his marriage, and he has this electric sheep that he takes care of because in this society, in this future version of Earth, everyone left on Earth is pretty much decimated. The environment has been destroyed, and most of the people on Earth have left Earth already. So the people who are left behind are people like Deckard. Usually they're people who cannot leave for one reason or another. There's something mentioned in the book about how there's dust, and so it's affecting people's IQ, and so people with lower IQ have to stay behind. It's never really made clear why Deckard has been left behind or why his wife has, but they are still on Earth, and there's supposedly not very many of them left. Everybody on Earth pretty much is responsible for taking care of a living thing. It's considered immoral to not have, it's not even a pet, but to not have an animal that you care for. So Deckard doesn't want people to know that he can't afford to have a live animal, so he has this electric sheep. And at the beginning of the book, he's going back and forth with his neighbor who has a horse and is getting another type of animal, or is trying to mate his horse, I think, because he wants baby foals. And Deckard is talking about how he wants to buy a foal, but the guy says, no, you can't buy one because you have that sheep and I have all this other stuff. And it's this big source of shame in Deckard's life that he thinks he's the only person left who does not have a live animal. He has an electric one. Then Deckard gets into work at the police station, and he finds out that the guy who was like the best at retiring androids from his faction has been shot by an android who is posing as another police officer. So this android is on the run, and Deckard gets that guy's old case file, including this android that he has to now retire. And there's 6 androids in total, but first he has to go to Washington. I don't know if I mentioned, the book is set in 2021. That's why I read it this year. It's set January 2021 in San Francisco, California. So he has to go up to Washington State to interview the man who now makes these Nexus 6 type androids, which are supposed to be the most human-like you can get. He has to interview one of his androids to make sure they have this special interview test to tell whether an android is a human or to tell whether a person is an android, I guess. And it's called the Voigt Conf test, and it basically is a test. You get asked a series of, or put in a series of scenarios, and you have to respond with what you would do, but what your answers don't matter as much as what your body is doing in response. So it's testing your body's stress responses to certain things. One of the things is like harm to animals, harm to other people, just things that, because this society is so focused on empathy towards every other living thing, things that these people wouldn't be okay with, basically. So Deckard goes and he interviews first the secretary at this company that makes these Nexus 6 models, and he finds out that she is an android. And he tells her boss, I'm pretty sure this isn't, like, she's an android. But the boss doesn't want her to know because Rachel doesn't know she's an android because they figured out a way to implant memories into the androids' heads so they think that they are human. And that becomes a big part of both the book and the film, is whether or not you can trust everyone around you, because any one of them could have had fake memories implanted and believe that they were truly human, and so you just really don't know. But then it is also how he finds out that the Voigt Conf test works. Then Deckard has to move on and try to retire, which is shooting and killing basically the other androids on his list, now that he knows that he has a workable test to go off of. So he is able to kill the first android, whose name I can't remember now. I'm sorry. But he moves through and is going to retire each of these androids. The next android that he has to track down after he kills the first one who killed the other police officer is a woman named Luba Craft, I think. And she is a famous opera singer on Earth. And so he has to find her at this opera house and then goes and poses as an interviewer to ask her questions. And she thinks he's a pervert. And so when he's asking her these questions to test her empathy reactions, or empathetic reactions, I guess, he's telling her that he thinks she's an android and he thinks she doesn't know she's an android because she might have memories implanted. But she sits there and tells him, well, have you ever taken this test? And he says no. And she says, how do I know you're not an android? That sort of sets in the whole theme of the book, which is that Deckard isn't sure anymore if he's a person or if he's an android. Blade Runner, the movie, is a 1982 sci-fi drama film directed by Ridley Scott and written by Hampton Fancher and David Peoples, and it stars Harrison Ford, as well as there's other cast members, but Harrison Ford is the big one. He plays Rick Deckard in the movie. And there are lots of things that are different from the book to the film. Aesthetically, I think the film is beautiful. It's very, like, rainy and neon, and it almost reminds me of, like, I've never been to Tokyo, but it's what I imagine Tokyo to be like. And there's lots of Orientalism going on in the movie. I'm not really sure why that was included, but it's very 80s in every sense of, like, the neon, the rain, the hairstyles, the clothing, even just, like, the vibe and the shock value is all very, very 80s, and very 80s trends, which I guess makes sense because it was a film from the 80s. The book was a lot slower paced and a lot more, it was very gloomy, so I guess the rain in the movie makes sense, but the book was much more, again, like I said, about the character of Rick Deckard, and the way that the movie portrays the character isn't inaccurate, it sort of soaked up all of the context that you had for why Rick Deckard was so unhappy with his life, and instead just shows you that he's unhappy with Harrison Ford's facial expressions, and the way he interacts with his fellow cops and his boss. Another difference between the book and the film that I thought was interesting, I didn't really understand why it was this way, is the book is set in January 2021, and the movie is set in November 2019. So I don't know why they changed the date. If anyone does know, let me know, because I was curious about that. So there are several big themes in the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep book that were not included in the film. One of them is that Earth is desolate. Like, there's not very many people left. There's a guy who lives in an entire apartment building all by himself, and it's supposedly not that rare for that to happen there. And something similar happens in the movie, but it's more construed as the person who lives all by themselves is a hermit and very weird, instead of there's just not very many people left, as the book sort of made it out to be. In the book, with people having to take care of these animals and it being immoral not to have a pet of some sort or an animal of some sort, there's this idea of, like, the scarcity of these animals, because most of the animals on Earth, like, a lot of them are extinct, and a lot of them aren't quite, or the ones that are not extinct are very expensive to own and to maintain, but it's, again, it would be considered immoral for people to just let the animals go and not take care of them. And one thing that I thought was really interesting, that the movie included this slightly, but they didn't have the same respect for animals that was displayed in the book in the movie. And I don't know if it was because Ridley Scott thought that wouldn't, or the writers, I guess, thought that wouldn't translate on film, but I did think that was interesting. First, when Deckard goes to the place where they make the Nexus 6s to do his interview process on Rachel, he sees an owl in their entryway, and he asks her if it's a real animal, and in the book, she tells him it is. But in the movie, she says, no, it's, of course not, they're extinct, it's fake. Because in the movie, I guess, no animals are really real. And they touch on it a second time when he goes to the I can't remember her name, Luba Lovecraft, is that it? I don't know why that's what I'm thinking of. I wish I'd looked it up, sorry. When he goes to visit Luba, the female android that he needs to retire, in the film, she's an exotic dancer who has a snake that she dances with, I guess. Or like a snake charmer, maybe? I don't really know. They don't show her act. But they do show her boobs later, so if that's what you're into, it's in the movie. But like I said, in the book, she's an opera singer. So I thought that was a really interesting twist, and I feel like that's a very 80s thing to do, like to add a little bit of shock. And plus, probably no one cares about opera in 1982 as much as they would care about an exotic dancer with a snake. I don't know, maybe it just felt more futuristic to them than an opera singer. But she has a fake snake that she dances with. Deckard asks her if the snake is real, and she says, no, of course not. If the snake was real, you think I'd be dancing in this joint? Which again, goes back to like the socioeconomic status. So the movie does make mention of that, but it's not a spotlight as it is in the book. And it's not Deckard's motivation. Deckard's motivation to kill the androids in the book is so that he can buy himself a real animal. And in the movie, he doesn't have a fake animal, first of all, and nobody has animals. So it's not like this thing that he's missing out on. Also in the movie, the streets are crowded constantly. There's not this desolate feeling of there's not very many people around. And a big part of the book that you can't trust anybody, that happens in the movie. But in the movie, it's much more intimidating because it's a bustling city. And so there's people all around him all the time. And the farther he gets into this spiral of not being able to trust anyone, I feel like the more the camera angles and like the shots of the film were able to capture that like desperate feeling that he was getting, where he's not sure if he can trust himself, he's not sure if he can trust the cop he works for, he's not sure if he can trust anyone around him. The final theme that I felt was really important in the book that wasn't at all mentioned in the movie is the role of Mercerism in this future colony community and empathy boxes. So in the book, everyone in their home has what's called an empathy box, and you go into it and you hold on to these handles, and it's unclear if it's like a virtual reality experience. That's sort of how I read it to be, of this guy Wilbur Mercer, who basically is their religious figure, and you via his body and like his experience and everyone else who's touching the empathy box at any given time are walking up this hill, and you experience him getting stoned to death. I don't know if you could actually die doing it, but you do end up with cuts from the stones being thrown at you. And that was a very interesting subplot of the book, is this idea of this religious group, and then the androids come back to Earth in the book so that they can witness everyone's panic when they realize that Wilbur Mercer's not a real person. Because there's this guy, Buster Friendly, the talk show host that everyone on Earth has been watching for years, is an android. And he exposes Wilbur Mercer to be just an old guy living out in the woods who got paid to do this stint by the government. The emphasis on empathy with your fellow human was a concept that the government invented. And so it even brings back more of that question of what does it even mean to be human? What is even the purpose of anything if we can be force-fed fake empathy? Then what is real empathy? And it was supposed to make the whole world sort of have this crushing realization that they are not different from androids, and to really experience what the difference might be. None of that is even in the movie at all, which I thought was interesting. There's no Buster Friendly, there's no Mercerism, there's no empathy boxes. And the empathy test isn't fully explained. It's just sort of left at humans have empathy, androids don't have empathy. They can fake human emotions, but they don't experience them, which was interesting. Some of the themes that the book and the movie do have in common, a big one is Deckard's dissatisfaction with his life. So like I mentioned earlier, in the book, Deckard is not really getting along well with his wife. He's miserable at work. He's not making enough money. He's upset that he doesn't have a live animal. He only has this fake animal. And as the book goes on, he starts to experience more self-doubt about whether or not he's an android and if the cops he's working for are androids and who are the androids and who are the people and what really the difference between them is. He becomes more and more dissatisfied with his job, and it becomes more and more of this like thing that he doesn't want to do. Because at the beginning of the book, he doesn't mind retiring androids and he is focused on the money that he's going to get at the end of the day. At the end of the book, he's more concerned with them in the way that you would be concerned about killing another human. It's like he suddenly had to go through this realization that maybe they're not that different from me. Maybe I am one of them. And in both the book and the movie, he sort of develops a relationship and feelings for one of the androids, Rachel, the first one that he meets, who worked for the company that made the other androids. I wish I could remember, but I can't. He starts to realize that he has feelings for her. In the movie, their like scene together was kind of icky to watch. I wasn't really into it and I didn't really understand why it was happening that way. In the book, she basically seduces him and they go out to a hotel together because obviously he has a wife at home. And it's interesting because he spends so much time in the book discussing and thinking about whether or not he would get a live goat or a live sheep like he has, or if he would get something entirely different. Does he want a horse? It's like a chapter of that and like 2 paragraphs of him, maybe even 1, of him being like, I love Rachel. That's what I've discovered. And so I thought the movie did a lot better job with their relationship to make it believable, but that's what I mean about the pacing being weird in the book, or like different to what I guess a modern reader is used to. And then the other big theme in common from the book and the movie is the question of what really is different between androids and humans. And we explore this again through Deckard's self-doubt and him questioning whether or not he is an android or whether or not it matters at the end of the day. He also questions his attraction to Rachel because if she's an android and he's a human, like, should that even be happening? And he begins to understand the androids have come to Earth because they want to figure out how to extend their lives. They only are programmed to live for like 5 years, I think, or 4 years or 5 years or something like that, because beyond that point they would start to develop their own emotions and thereby becoming more like human. And I think that is, like, Deckard's job is to retire them before they reach that age, or they will reach that age and just naturally decline. And so him seeing their desire for a longer life really makes him question his job and what he's doing. I will say, I thought the book did a better job explaining what the Blade Runner's job sort of was and what they did, and he didn't in the film do very much in the sense of when he would retire an android, he didn't bring it in for the bounty, which I guess is boring, so that's probably why they didn't put it in, but it just, like, it made it more of an action film with not that much action than it did, like, a character study as the book sort of was written, which I thought was an interesting take on it. The other thing that I will note about the movie that was kind of strange is everything in the book is so subtle. You don't know flat out that Deckard is bothered. You have to read into it a lot. It takes a lot of mental energy to read into and to think and to explore all of the things that aren't being said on the page. Like why the androids came back to Earth when they were living on Mars and they could have gone anywhere in the galaxy, and why Deckard is feeling these feelings for Rachel, and why his wife is so unhappy in her life. Like, you have to really think about everything that's happening because it's not just about the sheep. And that's something that I thought was really interesting in the book that's not even in the movie, is the electric sheep, because the book he keeps going back to the fact that he has this electric sheep and it's this point of contention in his marriage and this point of shame for him, and that's not even a part of the movie. And I feel like the movie lost a lot of the subtlety that the book had. There's a scene when the androids break into the home of the guy who created them and they say, "We want more life," which is about as subtle as a cannon, but it's also, the movie isn't subtle at all. It'll tell you. It tells you how it is. And there's a quote that I wanted to read you. When I wrote my review of this on Letterboxd, I came across someone else's review, and I just wanted to read you the quote at the very end of it because I feel like it perfectly sums up how I felt, how I ultimately feel about the movie, like the movie definitely, but also parts of the book, and also parts of things that end the same ambiguous way as Blade Runner did. And it says, Blade Runner is one of many films which tricks its audience into thinking they're smart by asking an unanswerable question. Is Deckard a replicant? Maybe he is, or maybe he isn't, but neither answer makes this movie anything more than the tedious, flat, insipid bore that it is. And while I didn't find the movie as bad as that person did, I did give it 2.5 stars because I thought that the visuals were really nice, but it lacks in plot, and a lot of what the book has to offer is not flashy, and it's not exciting. It's more introspective, and I just don't think 80s movies, especially like 80s action flicks, really give you a lot of that. And people love this movie for what it is, and I think that's great, and I think if you love this movie, that's awesome. It wasn't quite the adaptation that I would have hoped for, and it doesn't upset me necessarily that this is the way that it is, but I think because this film was so successful, it is going to be nearly impossible for them to do a remake or a version of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep that would actually honor the novel's intentions. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you felt about Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or Blade Runner down below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this whole video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more content from me, go ahead and subscribe. I do post at least once a week, hopefully more than that. I'm doing the best I can, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!
I should've told you that I loved you one more time.